I think you've got people who think that if this person has success, I can't. You've got that whole scarcity thing.
You also have
And I think
trauma.
it gets back to your crabs in a barrel,
Mm,
which,
right.
which, I mean, that's not really what feminism is.
What's up, peoples? It's your bartenders, Mr. Z.
And your boy Omega.
Today, we get to introduce a loyal listener and a wealth of knowledge, Kelly Bradley, as she gives us all a semi formal education surrounding feminism, feminist ideals, an outlook towards the future, and much, much more. As every episode, we want to thank all of you for listening. We truly appreciate you listening to our hearts and minds on varied and difficult topics.
Special thank you goes out to our Patreon subscribers for their support of the show. Every little bit helps us reach our goals to invite more high-profile guests and create bonus content.
And if you want to join in our conversation outside of this cast, feel free to hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at HaveADrinkCast, and make sure to use that hashtag HADcast.
Remember, this is always a conversation. If you don't agree, you want to voice your opinions, or even suggest a topic for an episode, feel free to join our Discord as well. The link will be in the description.
And please, if you like what we're doing here, share us with your friends, your family, your neighbors. Heck, put your art degree to the test and turn our likenesses into furries and commission our costumes so we may cross all bounds and entertain those furry and wide. Your referrals mean a lot to us, as that's how we gain more listeners. So,
Thank you again.
and get prepared to sit
Think.
and have a drink.
Welcome to Have a Drink Podcast. Enjoy the episode.
We said.
Peace.
What's up, peoples, and welcome back to another episode of the Have a Drink Podcast, where we invite you to sit, think, and have a drink. We're your bartenders, Mr. Z.
And I'm your boy Omega. Hey. And we have our great brother Richard. He's back with us again this evening.
Hey, what's up, Richard? And we have a super special guest for you this evening, coming to drop lots of knowledge on all of our listeners. Actually, is one of our listeners, in fact, one of our first listeners to ever listen to the podcast. An amazing person, a sweet human being, and thankful to have you on here. So thank you for joining us, Kelly.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So today, to keep in line with the month and the theme of what we feel was important for this month is getting education in not just women's history, but we also thought it would be a good time to retouch on feminism, especially as we had that fun experiment in like the very beginning about like just trying to figure out if we can even see what it means to ourselves and to each other, and to see where we can go from there. But obviously it came out with we needed a lot more education. So with that being said, I am thankful that we get to have you on and we get to dive into more of this topic about feminism.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. When Z first reached out to me, he'd said to me that the goal was to have a female-led discussion. And I tend to be kind of literal, so I believed him. So I hope you guys are ready, because I brought stuff.
Fantastic.
No, we definitely really do want that, and if you I'm sure you heard the last episode. It was very female heavy, and we wanted it to be lit that way too, because we're very cognizant of how male dominant everything is, or so many things are. So we just want to make sure that we give that love and that light and that opportunity for you to please take over and really help us, enlighten us, give us that great feminine energy and knowledge that we probably don't even know that we need. So please
I
take it
will
away.
try. I will do my best. One of the questions that you all asked in your last episode that you started with were thoughts on Women's History Month. So I thought maybe I'd share mine. which is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? That kind of thing. To me, as I think about Women's History Month, it's just like Black History Month. The fact that you need a month suggests that there's an underlying problem, right? Because if history representing people of color and women were woven throughout all of the mainstream history teachings, you wouldn't need a month. So I think it's evidence that there's a shortcoming. But the other thing is, it's better than nothing, because at least it's an acknowledgement that there's a shortcoming. So I think that systemically, though, what we need to do is we need to move to a place where the dominant culture doesn't result in, right now we've got largely white men writing history books, publishing history books, distributing history books, determining what gets taught. And while that, it's like history is told from the perspective of the victors. In this case, history is told from the perspective of those who hold power. So until we get to a point that we've got better representation of folks in all of those positions along the way, we're going to continue to have to do work, because systemically we're just not there. So that's my women's history thought.
That was powerful. I really enjoyed that.
Thanks. All right, let's see what's next. I loved your discussion about feminism, and I was talking very loudly to the TV when I was watching it. So one of the things that, if my memory serves me right, because I didn't go back and re-listen to it, is that I don't know that there was a discussion around the definition of it. And so really simply, to be a feminist is to believe in gender equity. That's it. And not just cisgen, but whatever gender you identify with, equity across the board. And after I watched your first episode on it, so this was, I don't know, maybe a year ago? So
almost a year ago.
Okay, so my youngest is 12 now, so he would have been 11-ish. And no context, after I saw your episode, I said, Kyle, are you a feminist? And he looked absolutely appalled. And he's like, no. And I said, why not? He said, because boys and girls are the same, Mom. I said, can you define feminist for me? He goes, yeah, it means you think boys are better than girls. And I said, talk to me about that. He goes, it's like misogynist or racist. So my first thought was, my boy knows misogynist. And I kind of thought, okay, this is okay. But I thought he's right. And you think about all those words that end in ist are usually terrible, like dentist. No, but like really.
Hey, I can back that one up, dentist. It's horrible experience. No.
That one was for you. But it made me think about how the way we frame an issue and the language that we use can set us up to have a really good experience or a really negative experience. And I've got like a handful of examples. One is, you think about gender inclusive language, and I'm going to take it in a way it doesn't normally go, but using the word Latinx. So you're not indicating whether this is a masculine or a feminine person, or a masculine or a feminine thing. It's Latinx, right? And I read this research that I thought was fascinating. So in Spanish and in German, words are either masculine or feminine. And the word key is feminine in Spanish, la llave, and it's masculine in German. I don't know what it is, so I'm not going to tell you. But what's interesting is this group did research among native Spanish speakers and native German speakers and asked them to describe a key without using the word. The German speakers said it's metal, it's strong, it has sharp edges, this Spanish speaker said it's small, it's delicate, it's light. And so all the adjectives were all built around that masculine or feminine identifier. So it just kind of implies to me that there's all this stuff kind of underneath the surface. So then I started thinking about other ways that we do this, where it's intended or it's unintended. And you guys have probably seen this, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. But think about like violence against women. When you think about violence against women, they talk about the number of women who are victims, and they talk about what women did to end up in that situation. And to stop it, they talk about what women should do. You park there isn't a woman that I bet any of you know who hasn't heard. You park under a light, you carry your keys between your fingers. You don't go down a stairwell at night. You don't get in the elevator unless you notice that there are cameras. You watch how you dress. You never let anybody you don't know get a drink. If you have a drink and you set it down, you don't drink it again. If you're setting it down while you talk, you have to put your hand over the top. And 100 other things that we're taught to do so we don't become victims, instead of them talking about the perpetrators.
Actually, Zor just mentioned something to me the other day about even just driving, because like in a moment, you're not intentionally being rude, but sometimes you have to take space so that you just go for it. Just like don't like just like kind of like let go of that inhibition for a moment and just kind of go for it. You're doing it safely, but sometimes it takes a little bit of that extra nudge. And she goes, I can't do that. I can't think that way, because if I do and someone gets upset, like if I'm by myself, then something happens, I was like, whoa. And like it's the level of preparation needed, or precautionary measures taken in order to not have something come up.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing, just to piggyback off of that, was the conversation you were just speaking on is the same thing that we have in the household, not just with my daughter, but also just in the Black community. Like we have to have these types of conversations with our own kids about, well, when you do this, you got to make sure you don't do this, you don't go here, you don't act like this, you don't wear this, you don't say that. There's so many rules just so we can conform and excuse me, so we can conform and live. And that's what it sounds like. It's like we're pushing these women to conform just to live, as opposed to dealing with the actual issue, which is,
Yes.
like you said, the purpose. So that was very enlightening.
When I stay at a hotel, I never stay on the first floor. You never stay on the first floor. And you always ask for 2 keys. So anybody who sees you ask for 2 keys assumes there's a second person. It's woven through everything that you do. And I think what you're describing is exactly the same. We are all having to moderate what we do to fit in with the dominant culture, and we're not the dominant player. 2 more things kind of in this category. A handful of years ago, I was getting my annual review at work, and my boss had said to me, and all of my bosses, like above me, all the way up, are men. They're not all white men, but they're all men. And I have to go back at least 10 years, I think. And all my peers are men. But I had a boss say to me, Kelly, I think you would be even more effective if you presented yourself with less detail, and if you were more focused on what you were talking about. And he went through this whole thing, and I really listened to him, and I thought, I have to decide if I buy this. So what I did was I did some research, and I found a Harvard business case study that looked at executive speak. and they looked at characteristics of the way men tend to speak and characteristics of the way women tend to speak. And one of the things they found is that women tend to provide more context. Women want buy-in by the whole group. So we try to lay out enough factors, so if you disagree with me, you're disagreeing with the same fact base that I have. And so I took the Harvard business case study and I shot it to my boss. And I said, hey, I'm just curious. I'm trying to figure out if the way I talk doesn't feel executive to you because I've got some things to work on and it's not clear and I'm not persuasive, or is it because I don't talk like a man? And I want to share this with you because I want to get your thoughts. And about 20 minutes later, he called me. And he said, I had an unconscious bias and I didn't realize it. And you talk like a woman and I'm changing my mind and I'm so sorry and I'm redacting it from your annual review. Thank you very much. And I thought, he was a man, he was not a white man. But I was so impressed that he listened. And he will always be one of my favorite people. But yeah.
He used those 2 ears to hear.
Right? One mouth, 2 ears.
Yep. And even that, and I appreciate whoever that is, that he was able to find it in himself to right his wrong and be honest and upfront about that. That says a lot about him, because other men, especially probably those in his position, probably would have doubled down because they didn't want to get chumped out. But the fact that he was able to be cognizant of that and even said unconscious bias, shouts out to the UBP, that was a lot. That says a lot. So that's really awesome of you. And I'm glad that you were able to do that and you had the foresight to do that. So that's really awesome.
Thanks. So this is interesting. The first bank I worked at, so this is, you know, a couple minutes ago, but the first bank I worked at had a dress code. And I remember it to this day. And it was a dress code for everybody. No pastels, no floral.
That's only women for the most part.
Oh, yeah, I guess you're right. They wanted women to dress like men. So we belonged at the bank.
I can't believe that. It's ridiculous.
My first job at a bank, I wasn't allowed to wear pants. I had to wear a dress or a skirt, and I had to wear nylons, and I was pregnant. And it had, I mean, I'm sorry, but that's cruel. Cruel. And about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, everybody would know because they'd see me pick up a big old pair of scissors and walk into the bathroom because I would cut the front of my nylons out because I just couldn't take it anymore. Like, this is just dumb. But I, at some point, decided enough was enough. And I got a pantsuit and I wore it to corporate headquarters. I had one meeting. I drove up. I had an office in Chicago and an office in Milwaukee. I drove up to Milwaukee. I wore my pantsuit. I went to my meeting. I had lunch. I walked back out to the parking garage, drove home. By the time I got home, my voicemail was full. And it was full from all my female colleagues, not in Chicago, in Iowa, in Wisconsin, in Madison, you know, everybody had called because they had all heard, Kelly, is it true? Did you wear pants? What happened? Did anybody say anything? Is it okay? And because it was a clear dress policy violation, but I thought I was a vice president, and I thought if I can't do this, there isn't a woman here who can. So, but I did call my boss, who was the CEO of the bank in Illinois. I'm like, so, you know, you might get a couple of calls. I wore a pantsuit to Milwaukee. He's like, yeah. Like, it's against dress code. He's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, and everybody's calling and their bosses are probably all gonna freak out. He's like, nah, you're good. And they changed the dress code. But it could have gone either way.
It always starts with one.
It takes that awareness. like once you're drawn, usually it's kind of like once you're drawn to the situation, once you're drawn to and light has been shedded on, you know, that particular issue, topic, etc., like then that's when the correction, healing, etc., gets to start.
I'm going to build off of what Omega said earlier too. It was also the other reason I could do this is because my boss, a man, was supportive and open, and I knew that even if he didn't want to deal with it, he'd just go, "Sorry, it's stupid, but you just got to." Like I knew he was going to be okay, and it was because that man in power, I knew at some level he'd have my back. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. So it takes the man.
So what you're saying is you felt supported,
Yeah.
and that gave you the added strength that you needed to just take your first step and just do what you had to do.
And I felt respected.
That's huge.
Would you personally be offended, or I guess not offended, but less receptive to, say there's this new wave of teachings and it's about how to tap into your femininity, and a class is led by a male, or the lesson is spread out and laid out by a male?
Yeah.
Would you be more receptive to that being, coming your way, or being in the world, or what have you? Or would it be less receptive? And then I guess the opposite question for you guys is like, being a person of color, or a Black person,
I
if
was
you're
already
seeing
there. I
like
got you.
I have an answer for you. So for undergraduate, I went to an all women's college, and it was taught by men and by women. And it was a Catholic college, but it was a very progressive, liberal, feminist college. And some of our male teachers were just as effective as, I remember one of them, Father Bernie. I'll tell you Father Bernie and his sister Rosemary's story. Here's my two. Okay, I'll give you both. Father Bernie told us, he said, "Do you know why priests can't marry?" We're like I'm married to the church? And he's like, "No." He said, many, many years ago, priests were allowed to marry. And what happened was the land and the assets of the church in a specific geographic area were owned by the priest. But when the priest married and had children, and then if the marriage broke down, then the land often got distributed and the church was losing its assets. It's a money thing. So the church decided priests can no longer marry. And then if a woman claimed this baby belonged to the priest, she was immoral. Everybody would deny it. The land stayed with the church. That's the history of why priests are only men. And there used to be women priests, but when a woman is pregnant, there's no doubting whether or not it's her baby, right? So that's Father Bernie. So my answer was equally receptive to Father Bernie saying stuff. My other story is Sister Rosemary Nudd, who got her PhD while I was there. So then we called her Dr. Sister because we couldn't figure it out. Dr. Sister Rosemary Nudd was so flippin' cool. She had hair like down to her waist and it was like gray, and she didn't wear a bra. And her t-shirt, her favorite t-shirt said, "A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle." And she was just pretty radical. But she told us one day, she was talking about the Catholic Church in Galileo. And she said, just in the last couple of years, so you can, timestamp it if you want to, but please don't. Just in the last couple of years, the Catholic Church reopened its investigation into Galileo. Galileo had been sent into house arrest because he said that the earth revolves around the sun and it wasn't the other way around. This investigation took like 13 years to complete. So 350 years later, the Catholic Church acknowledges it was wrong. Galileo was right. and he's forgiven. So Dr. Sister Rosemary Nubb's takeaway was, if the Catholic Church and I disagree, it's all right. In 350 years, they're going to figure out I was right.
I love that.
Right? So either way, men or women, I can hear it either way. If it feels informed, if it feels authentic, if it feels like it's coming from a place of genuine caring, whether it's the heart or the head, the gender of the person doesn't matter to me.
The content is what really matters, but who the content is coming from, it kind of, it's going to hit differently.
Mhm.
You know, the information may be the same, but the impact is going to be different. You know what I mean? And that's just kind of what it is for me. You know, I've heard about, you know, a plethora of different colleges where they have like, you know, Black studies, where they have African American history class, stuff like that. And then you have some that are taught by non-Black people, and you have those that are taught by Black people. You know, and it's just the conviction and the know-how to be able to really talk about these subjects coming from somebody else. It just doesn't land as strong as one would want it to. But to actually have somebody who you feel can identify with you give you that information, it's going to hit differently. And that's just how I take it.
Can I
And
ask you a question
please.
about that? I'm wondering if that's because we're still so early in the discussion.
Yes. 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 We really are. I mean, and I say that because it's like I could see, I'll put it like this. There's going to be a difference between my mom standing up there and talking about it versus Mrs. Whitaker, who was like my old English teacher from high school, right? And the reason why I say that is because it's like Mrs. Whitaker's experience during that time is completely different from my mother's experience from that time. And I'm saying this because this is only 60 years ago. This, I mean, they're living the history that they're trying to teach us. So it's like the shared experience is going to be completely different. So that's why I feel like the conviction and the way it hits is going to be different. Not saying that the information is going to be any less. Not saying the content is any less. It's just the delivery and the way that it's going to be perceived and received is going to be different. And that's why, like, if I was to take a women's studies class, me personally, I would prefer it to come from a woman because you have you have an experience that I could never identify with because I've never been a woman, not a single moment in my life. So there are things that I will never be able to truly appreciate, understand, because you live that. Like the talks that you were speaking about earlier, speaking about how you have to worry about the keys, how you have to do all that. I've had these conversations with my daughter. Well, except I mean, she knows how to throw these things. But you know, it's like I've had these conversations with her and taught her how to be aware. But it's like if I was to have a son, it would be it would be the same type of conversation, but completely different. Because it's like now you're looking at different threats.
Yep.
And it's all about that perception.
Have you seen the show All American?
Yes, ma'am. With
Do
my
you,
wife.
do you remember the discussion that the two guys had about learning to drive?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, same thing.
Exact same thing. And then
Same.
like even with American Skin,
Mm,
I don't know if you saw American Skin, but the same conversation and just talking about learning to drive. It's like you have to know how to be, you know, it's different because it's like you can't expect me to truly understand what it is to be a woman and
right.
and to be like, okay, case in point, the nylons. That was a small thing, but that was huge because no man could ever understand what it is to be pregnant wearing nylons. A man could understand what it's like to wear nylons, yes, because he could wear them himself, but you will never ever have that understanding of what it's like to be pregnant, having to wear nylons,
And
having to conform to that in
I'm
heels.
insane.
So that's why I feel like it would just hit differently. Sorry,
And
I talk a lot.
Z and I have had that conversation many times because I've said, I would never apply for a job for inclusion and diversity. It's not that I'm not super passionate about it. It's that I can't be as effective in that role as someone else could. And my friend, and she was on a board of directors that was working to try to improve the quality of life in, it was a school and a town in Chicago, a neighborhood that was heavily Mexican. And every time that she would start to talk about something, one of the women on the board would say, you know, we really need to get somebody who knows what they're talking about in here. Because she wasn't Latinx. She was a Jewish white woman who was super passionate about it. And this other man, this Latinx guy who always sat next to her would say, well, Dr. So-and-so is really our expert. And she'd go, no, I mean a real one. And so I said to my friend, I said, I don't think this is going to change. And I think it's really sad, but it is what it is.
I just have to say, that is rough.
Right?
That is rough. That's all I had to say.
Well, can you imagine you get a PhD, you dedicate your life to this because you really, really care about trying to make a difference, and then you're just dismissed. Because what you show up with on the outside, because, they didn't know where she grew up or what her experience was or anything.
Right. It comes back to that the duality of the receptivity of sometimes it won't hit the same way as it would coming with someone from someone with similar life experience associated with the topic that you might be passionate about.
Right.
An outside indicator of that similar experience.
Correct. Absolutely.
Let's talk about the Bechdel test. So one of the things okay, so now we're hitting into the things about equity gap. So we talk about there being an equity gap. How do we measure that? How do we know if there really is an equity gap? And how do we start to solve it? So I tried to come up with some things to kind of start to anchor that discussion. So the first is one of my favorites, and it's called the Bechdel test. The Bechdel test was created in the 1980s by Dr. Bechdel. And it was designed to try to measure representation of women in the media. And to pass the Bechdel test, there are just 3 questions. Have you heard this before, Omega? Or is this new? Oh, good. Okay. So 3 questions in the Bechdel test. Okay, Z, do you remember what all 3 are?
I can.
I'll help you.
Yeah. Okay. So the first one I remember was it has to have more than one woman, so it has to be at least 2 women with names that talk about something other than a man.
Yeah. So you have to have at least 2 characters who are named, and the idea there is that they're important enough that you're associating them with a name. They have to have a conversation with each other, and the topic of that conversation cannot be a man. That's it. In the mid-1990s, the percent of shows in the US reached a level that flatlined and is still the case. Guess what percent, that's for Omega, guess what percent of shows fail the Bechdel test in the US?
99% of the shows.
Oh man, I wish that were true, because then it would really be more powerful. No, but about half.
I'm sorry, I said 99 because you said the 90s, right? Or are we talking about now?
From the 1990s, it hasn't changed.
Oh, damn.
It hasn't changed. So in the 1990s, it got up to about half are passing, half are failing, and that's still where it is today.
That's a shame.
Can you imagine 2 women with names who have a conversation about something other than a guy? It's astounding.
I mean,
maybe it goes down now because now they have conversations about women, or anything else. So it doesn't necessarily have to be about a man anymore. So maybe it might be a little dip. Maybe.
Not yet.
I tried. I'm really reaching right now. I'm reaching. Hopefully there's change. Maybe not.
It's interesting, right? Okay, let's talk about pay. Let's talk about pay. Pay and intersectionality, I think. Okay, so this one I kind of like. So there was a study done to look at pay gap. And the people who participated in the study or whose data was included in the study, they were all at least 25 years old, so 25 or older, and everyone in the study had at least a 4-year college degree. So they tried to kind of get a little bit more homogenous of a group. If a white man in that group made $1, how much do you think a white woman made?
Realistically, 85 cents.
You're so close, 82.
82.
Just,
Hey, not bad.
that was really good.
I mean,
now,
that's not a good idea, but
no, right. Now, guess how much a black man made?
a big part of me wants to be like 75, but I'm kind of leaning towards it's probably 90,
82.
80. Oh, well,
They made the same. A white
wow.
woman and a black man. Now, I'm going to throw some caveats out there, right? If I saw the data, I'd actually look at it a lot of different ways. Okay. How many of these people had a master's degree? How many had a PhD? Right, so there are other factors that could be contributing. What's the age distribution? How many years of experience did they have? So there's other factors that could be skewing it, but it's the best data I could find. So a white woman and a black man both made 82 cents if a white man was making $1. You're really screwed though if you're a woman of color. If you're a black woman, you made 65 cents. If you are a Hispanic or Latinx woman, you made 58 cents. Asian women made more than all of the other women. Asian women made 87 cents. And so
More than the black man.
more than the black man.
I mean,
So,
I'm sorry to put that out there, but I mean that's what I am. So that just really
right? Well,
that was
that's
a
why
slap.
I included that one. So then I tried to figure out why. I couldn't find any good research, but I found a lot of other research that I thought might help. So I thought, okay, so I was going to start to figure it out on my own, and it's kind of dangerous, right? Because you come up with hypotheses and you try to figure out, can you validate this? Does this feel like it's right? So I started thinking about when I was a single mom raising my daughters. What were the things that were barriers for me in moving up at work and making more money? So cost of childcare was just crazy. Education, it took me a long time to go back and get my master's because I had little kids and I was a single parent. And so I started thinking, okay, for me to be successful, I needed adequate childcare. I needed to not worry about healthcare, which means I couldn't be worried about my kids with healthcare or my parents. So if you're in a multi-generational situation where you're taking care of other people, right? The taxes, what's the tax system and is it equitable and that kind of thing. So I started thinking about this idea of intersectionality, which is this concept that every characteristic that you have that doesn't conform with the dominant culture's group makes everything worse, right? It's a multiplier effect. And if you think about, so then I start thinking, okay, Asian women in order of salary, Asian women, white women, black women, Latinx women. If you're going to come up with stereotypes, which is like a scary, dangerous thing to do, but it helps you kind of get there logically to see if it's right, started thinking, what are some of the differences? And I thought, well, culturally, Asian women are probably more likely to only have 1 or 2 kids. Because in a lot of those countries that perhaps they came from, fewer kids, and education is really, really, really prioritized. So maybe those women don't have the expense and the distraction of a bunch of kids, and maybe they have a higher level of education on average than the white women and the rest of the women. And I thought, okay, that can kind of, so that became my hypothesis. So I started with that, Asian women versus white women. And then I was thinking, in a lot of Black communities and Latinx communities, you tend to be multi-generational. You tend to take on responsibilities for parents and kids. And I started thinking about the multiplier effect. One of your shows, you guys were talking about your fathers and how many of you didn't have a dad in the home or didn't have a dad that was involved in the way that you would have liked them. And so you start to figure, if you're being raised by a woman of color, if you're being raised by a white single mom, if you're being raised by a Latinx mom, you are starting out with the deficit that they experienced in their life, right? So you're starting out so far behind to even try to get even. Because part of what was bothering me about it was I thought, okay, we all know that there are these problems, but what do we need as an agenda to fix it? Like, how do you fix it? And so that's what I was trying to get at. So then I pulled research from a bunch of other countries and I compared salaries. And then I pulled specifically research for countries that have socialized medicine and socialized childcare to see if it shrunk that salary gap, and it did. So here is Kelly's hypothesis according to my hunch. I think if we look at what we really need to make changes on, it's accessibility of low cost or no cost childcare, period. Because how are you supposed to be able to go back to school or work a job where they need extra hours if you're worried about your kids? Healthcare is the same thing. I think about the number of ear infections and all kinds of stuff. And if I didn't feel like I could get into the doctor right away, days I'm missing work, I'm not going to get promoted, all of that. Access to education, and even, I'm going to say even more than that, is networking. One of the things that everyone who wants to do well needs is you need access to people whose experiences are similar to yours, who have been successful, to help you figure out how to navigate it and to help pull you up. And we are underrepresented. All of those groups other than white men are underrepresented. And so it is that much harder to do all of those things. Criminal justice reform, period. You know, I think about some of the things that I've heard in my work experience. I wanted to go back and get my MBA. And the woman in HR called me down to her office. And she said, Kelly, look, we think you're really smart. We think you do a good job and everything, but you're a single mom. You're a single mom. We just don't think you can dedicate the time that it's going to take to do this. So even though we pay for MBAs for everyone else, we're not going to pay 100% for yours because we just don't think it's a good investment because we're not sure that you're going to be able to do well. I said, okay, you fund MBAs for everyone else doing it. Everyone else doing it is a man. They're like, yeah, but they don't have the same distraction that you're likely to have. So, right? I still went and I was really ticked off and I used a lot of not very friendly language and I paid the difference and I graduated magna fucking cum laude and then I left. But
Mic drop.
Did they reimburse you though?
As if I were a man? No.
I was hoping there was a silver lining.
just not as much. Or I can think about, I worked at a bank and I reported to the president, and we were friends. He in fact had recruited me from another bank to come, and I was head of retail banking. So the tellers and the personal bankers and the consumer lending officers and 2 other banks all reported up to me. And my boss said to me, and I actually am so grateful for it, because he helped me. He's like, Kelly, if the world were fair, you would be the president. He said, let's face it, you would be a better president than I would. He said, but a board of directors would never make you president. He said, you just don't look presidential. We had consultants come through at work to meet with all of the executives and give us some feedback on how we could be more effective. They had 2 pieces of advice for me. Cut your hair really short and always wear glasses.
Look like a man? Is that what they're trying to tell you?
Or don't look so much like a woman. Wear glasses, wear glasses. We want, because this is a study that was done in England. Did you know that men who are 3 inches shorter than their counterparts make $2,000 a year less on average? And women who weigh 14 pounds more, 14, make $2,000 a year less. 14. So these biases, like, it's ridiculous, right? God forbid, if you're short, overweight, woman of color, you are screwed.
This is crazy.
These are just kind of some interesting things. You know, you often hear people say, I hear people say that every ship needs one captain. And I have girlfriends who say, well, my husband is really the boss because you need one captain in the house. And I think you need to agree on where you're going. Like, you need to be tightly aligned on the destination. But you got lots of people with a lot of skill sets who will get you there. And the more people you include, the better you'll be at having a smooth trip there. You know, I think, Z, the work that we do on the side,
It's co-creation.
it's 100% co-creation. But also, most of the big things we open up to the whole team. Does this feel right to everybody? Does it feel wrong?
Right.
There's a metaphor that's used in economics and a lot of other areas, and it's about the three-legged stool. And what the legs represent vary, right? Sometimes it's savings and retirement, manufacturing, jobs. I heard somewhere, when you take that three-legged stool and you give it to a group of men and you say, how do you optimize this? Could you maximize this for us? What they solve for is to make the stool taller. More jobs, more money, more this. And the top of the stool is society, right? Society, how well society sits is on those 3 legs. And where men focus first is making the stool taller. Where women focus is making the seat larger. It's really interesting. It's that desire to include everyone that I think is really different. And it gets back to something that you said earlier, Z, at the top of the discussion about feminine energy and masculine energy. Women and men both have equal parts of feminine and masculine energy, but in the US and in Western Europe, everybody's like overly steeped in masculine energy because it's what feels successful.
It's very interesting that you said that. And I'm going back to the taller versus wider, because it makes me think of, like, I've heard my brother say this before. He's like, a man can build a house, but a woman makes it a home. You know, and then when I think about that, in the context of how you just spoke, it made me think about how many men or how many people would we hire to build a home, to build a house, right? It'd be like, let's just say, give or take, let's say 20 people. But a woman would make that home, she'll fill it with hundreds of people throughout its lifetime, thousands of people throughout its lifetime. And you see, it's always about the invite and making it feel communal, making you feel a part of it. And that's the difference. And that's what I was gathering, is the difference of community versus just framework and opportunity.
Ooh, I
So
love
that's what I gathered from you.
that. And you guys have talked about this before, but it's how so often when a man is talking to a woman, the first thing that he comments on is something physical. Something physical. So you will remember both of these. I was introduced at a meeting a number of months ago by a colleague. And he said, Kelly's going to talk to us about this. She's really young, but she's really smart.
What the hell did your age have to do with your intelligence?
Well, and why do you introduce a woman and say that she's smart?
It should be assumed.
Right, like it's special. This is a woman and she's smart.
They exist?
Wait. So what you're saying is she's got brains.
Yes, pretty and smart. Remember that one?
Oh my gosh, that was.
That's rough.
You want to tell that story?
No, you can go ahead. This is your story.
I was on a date and this man said to me, "You're exactly my type. You're pretty and smart."
Date over.
It was done. The other thing I want to share is that one of the things I love about all the stuff that you guys talk about and what we're talking about today is that so often the challenges are the same because of the same broken systems. And dominant culture has an incentive to keep the systems as they are. And the way they do that, in my view, is by reinforcing what I think are the two big lies about everything in life. The first is that we're disconnected, that we're alone. Instead of seeing the connectivity of all of us, of all people, of all souls, by dividing us, we're all weaker. And the second big lie is this lie of scarcity. If you get more, it's coming out of my pocket. Instead of just, if we all have opportunity, we will all produce more of value. And I think those two things, if we can get to a place where enough people see the connectedness and the commonality and understand that this is not pie, it's not like if I take a piece, you get one less piece. I think we have a real shot at fixing some of this stuff.
It's like universal health care. People are like, well, I don't want to pay for everybody else. I don't want to do this. Well, why should I have to? On the flip side, my thought process is, why wouldn't you want to?
Right.
Because one day you may be in need and somebody could help you. So why wouldn't you want to do that and be that safety net for somebody else? Why wouldn't you take pride in the fact that you were able to be there for somebody else? You don't have to know them. You don't have to get the accolades. Just the fact that you know that, you know what, I was able to do this so they can survive. I'm good with that.
Can you rise above your own personal need and what's tangible and within reach today? And think about planning for future generations. Think about helping out someone you might not know. Just think about doing some good.
That's my life. That's literally my life. I'm living that every day. And that's what I hope other people can do too.
Was there ever a point in your life when that wasn't your life?
No. I feel like God's put me on this earth to serve.
I love that.
As a kid, I've always done that. I've always been of service to others as best as I could.
I'm I'm part of why I asked is because as long as you're taking care of yourself, I have to believe that your internal life is that much richer because of it. And people don't realize it.
And that's because we're not bred to realize that. We're not taught to look at that. We're not surrounded by enough people that believe in that,
That's not how we define winning.
because they always say it's lonely at the top
Hmm.
when it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be.
I mean, we always talk about the crabs in the barrel, stepping on another to get to the top, but like, I mean, I know for personally for myself that like that was never the feeling. It was always when there was a great idea I had, it wasn't I need to go do this thing and then I'm going to create it and it's going to be that and I did it. It's always like I'm feeling this thing needs to be created. More people should be a part of this because more people should feel the joy about the birth of this experience, whatever it is, like I'll get my foot in the door into something, and my first thought is to turn around and be like, but can they come too? you know,
You put your foot in the door so other people can walk through.
right.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, Z, that's beautiful about how I've seen you do that is to take something that's of your own personal creation, something that you personally do, and to put it out there for a group of people to all now look at it and poke at it and change it and massage it and everything. That's a tough thing to do. And it doesn't look tough to watch you do it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming on. Like I 100% appreciate it because I mean we have these conversations off screen, and I've always said how important it would be to hear this information, and like I try to slide a lot of stuff what we talk about into the episodes that we create, but like I said before, it's more impactful, and especially like right now more than ever it's important to hear it coming from a woman, coming from her personal experience, coming from that level of education that is beneficial to all. um
Well,
I Yeah, absolutely. I have a question. I kind of I do want to ask that question that I made earlier,
Is this going to our
that I
Discord?
yes, but I also want Kelly to answer it though.
Great. No, no, that's good. I'm glad she
So
answers it here, and then hopefully others can elaborate in the Discord. So go ahead.
absolutely. Okay, so earlier I mentioned Meghan Markle. I know Meghan and Harry had their their interview with Oprah recently, and I mean the internet's exploded with all the different things that they talked about. A few things in particular, but something as I actually watched the full interview. I know that you all haven't yet, but as I was watching it, she said something and it struck me because I've heard this before. I know answers vary for everyone because not everyone's the same. To be a one woman is you're is a tangled weave of different multi-layered experiences. But how someone has said before, when we're looking at labels or when being labeled as a woman, you're often labeled with mother, caretaker, those kinds of roles, and it's always drawn in that direction, and kind of showing the world that you're more than that. But like in the idea of feminism, I think you know where I'm going with this. With the idea of feminism, um, so Meghan Markle said the greatest title I'll ever have is mother, and I know that it isn't the only defining factor for women, but there has been an experience of commenting on a woman being a mother. So I guess my question is, does it take away from feminism in that sense, or does it empower it? Or is it not as binary as it's being labeled?
Oh my gosh, there's so many layers to that question. I kind of am in love with it. Um, okay. I think being a parent is one of the most influential things that you can do that will carry on for generations. And so for me, being a mom is absolutely one of my favorite things. But I would argue that we should give men the same credit for being fathers because we don't. We discount their role there. So parent, right? So mom, no different from dad. We, at least I, so I'm only speaking for me today. I'm not speaking for all women, but often as women, we we're told that we are good, successful to the extent or proportionate with what we're doing to support other people. So all of those roles. And I made an observation a couple of years ago, and I didn't know if it would stick, but it totally stuck. I feel like the first half of my life, I was doing, those relay races where you go down to the end and you have to put on a hat, and you go to the other one, you put on a scarf, you go to the other one, you put on a jacket. So I feel like the first half of my life was like that, where I was putting on all of these different roles or masks, learning all the things that society was telling me I needed to do. And then I got halfway to my life, and I'm calling this half the unbecoming, because I'm taking all that crap off because it's not me. Who am I at my essence? Yes, I'm a mom. Yes, I'm a sister. Yes, I'm a daughter. Yes, I'm a friend. Yes, I'm a teacher. Yes, I'm a boss. Yes, I'm an employee. But it no longer feels as central. They're just places that I give my energy.
I love that question, by the way. I love the question, and I loved your answer.
Hmm.
I really did. I mean, because I always say this: being a parent is a thankless job, and sometimes there are some that put too much emphasis on it to where they forget about themselves because they become so selfless and I can't even find the word that I'm trying to say, but they just become that's all they're that's all they are is a parent. They lost themselves. They are just a parent, and that's a problem in itself. But then also there are those that are so I have to fight this. So they're like, don't call me a mother, don't call me a parent. I'm more than that. I'm me. It's like, well, why? It's like, why can't you be both? It's like that there's power in that. You know what I mean? I mean, the most influential person on this planet is your parent. If you really boil it down,
Yeah.
they develop who you are. That is the most and even if not by words but by actions, not by actions, by blood, they are the most influential person on the planet. So and the reason why I say that is because it's like I loved how you said don't forget about the fathers.
Mm.
The fathers are always overshadowed, and that's been like my longest running joke when I've been teaching group classes for the longest time. I'm like, hey, you know what, Mother's Day is coming up, everybody. Well, I know you guys are gonna go all out, but just remember, keep that same energy when it's Father's Day, June. Better remember that.
Well, it's this whole idea of division, that things are mutually exclusive. Women, if they're a mom, that's all they are. Men, if they're a dad, it hardly counts. It's ridiculous. We're all a Venn diagram.
Right. And that's so crazy because if you like going back to cinema and television and movies and stuff, the dad is always a bumbling buffoon.
Right?
He's the
And
workhorse or the bumbling buffoon.
what's the mom?
She's overly nurturing, but she's also not the brightest or the sharpest pencil in the box at times. And it's like it's so like why do we have to play them down so
Or
much?
even the stick in the mud,
Yeah.
the
She's
buzzkill.
fun, the fun killer,
Right.
always. And she's afraid. She's super risk averse.
There was actually an episode of Family Guy that I had watched where Peter gets onto a kid show and he starts making all these puppets and things, and he ends up making a puppet of Lois. and he's talking, he's basically venting all of his frustrations out through these puppets. And he's, you know, she's the fun police, she's the buzzkill, she's the party ender. Like, it's like she comes to rain on the parade. And the way it translates to how the kids treat her outside, I think it's a really interesting caricature of life, of like how there becomes that lack of respect, or that you know, disconnection from moms can be cool too. Or that, you know, like, why are you always surprised when your mom is cool? Like,
Right.
like, like you shouldn't be. Like, if dads are cool, moms are just as cool. Like, we're
Well, and dads can be just as aware of what the kids are doing and just
exactly
as involved.
exactly.
And it's this, I don't know what it is. Well, you know, I do know what it is. It's that we associate masculine energy with what a man is supposed to be, and feminine energy with what a woman is supposed to be. And if we can just rebalance things, boy, we'd all be happier.
That's true. Very true. Very true. And it's crazy is because it's like, the feminine energy is the nurturer.
Mhm.
It's like, so why can't the masculine be nurturing too? Because I'm
Right?
gonna tell you right now, I am a very affectionate, loving, nurturing father. Like, my kid is my everything. Matter of fact, I just hugged her for even longer today, just because I was like, "Are you ready to come home? Dad misses you." And it's important because, and I had to explain this to her. I'm like, I don't ever want you to go a single day in this life without knowing that I love you and that I'm here for you.
Mhm.
And the day I pass, you're gonna miss these hugs, you're gonna miss these kisses, you're gonna miss this time. So I want you to know that. And that makes me think a lot about it. I'm like, my sister, my eldest sister, said one time, and I'll never forget it. She said, "I remember Dad hugging me,"
Mm.
and stuff like that. I've heard that many a times.
You know what
Mm-hmm.
though? I think sometimes we're we're so aware of how it affects us, of what happens or doesn't happen. So my similar example to what you just described is that in my entire life, my dad has never told me that he loves me. Does he? Yeah, I think he does. Um, but the people in my world that I love, I tell all the time. Because I thought, I don't ever want someone that I really care about not to hear this, not to feel this from me. And I'm not going to waste an opportunity to say it because it matters.
Every week, if not every other day, I message my daughter and tell her Dad loves you.
That's so sweet.
I mean, it's gotten to the point where like Ian will just randomly, "Hey, dad." I'm like, "Yeah, love you." Like, "Love you too."
Yeah, and that's important. And I keep saying that. It's like, I love it. I love seeing their relationship. I love seeing their relationship. It brings so much joy and warmth to my heart to see that. And it's so important. I'm so glad that you were able to point that out, about that importance. That says a lot, because I've heard other feminists speak before, and those were the battle axes of kill men, kill masculine energy, kill all that. And that was like,
So here's what I would say to that. A feminist is about gender equity. They weren't feminists. They might have been using the label, but they weren't practicing it.
mm, well, where's my other microphone that I'm supposed to drop for her?
It's interesting because I still see people like that though. The energy that they put out on the internet, I mean, it may not be the same energy that they hold at home, but like, I mean, that's the energy that they're putting out into the world, or out into the ether, is you know, is the kill all men narrative. And like, I've seen it recently.
Okay, so I'm going to say something. That really aggressive um, energy, like if you got to stereotype it, that's masculine energy. Huh? I don't know. I think what we've got is people who are afraid that they're never going to get ahead. I think you've got people who think that if this person has success, I can't. You've got that whole scarcity thing.
You also have
And I think
trauma.
it gets back to your crabs in a barrel,
Mm,
which,
right.
which, I mean, that's not really what feminism
Thank you for that.
is. Sure.
Thank you to all our patrons. We really, really appreciate you guys. Man, look at that. I mean, when you're a loyal listener, you could even become a guest on the show. I mean, look at Kelly. She's showing that right now. So thank you guys so much for all of your support, love, and contributions to the cause as we grow and get better with this with each passing day. So thank you guys so much. We truly, deep down at our hearts, believe and appreciate you. Um, keep it up as much as you can because we have some more content that we really want to put out and push, and we really 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 love what we do, and you guys being here to support us means the world to us. And for those of you that are going to be in the Discord, my man Z has got a fire question for you, and I can't wait to hear you guys conversing out there because Kelly brought a bunch of knowledge tonight, so hopefully we can expound on it in the Discord.
100%. And if you'd like to continue in this conversation outside of here, feel free to hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at Have a Drink Cast, and make sure to use the hashtag HADcast. That way we can see whatever you post. And I would implore you all to pick a famous unknown woman from history that you have learned about these past few weeks, or even maybe from our last episode, that you really felt empowered by. And I say, when you post it on either your Instagram or Twitter or anywhere, just use the hashtag Hadcast and tag us. We would love to see it. We'd love to be more educated as well, and also to know, what empowers you. Yeah, about that time.
It's about that time.
Thank you, Kelly, very much for joining us on this episode. We really appreciate you. We appreciate your knowledge. We appreciate you listening, and being willing to have these deeper conversations with us and educate all of us.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Wow, the pleasure was all ours. So thank you so much. And wow, I I have a whole new outlook on feminism, and I say thank you. All right.
I implore you all to raise your glasses. All right, kings, queens, and royals in between. I want to thank y'all for another successful episode of the Have a Drink podcast, where we invite y'all back to sit, think, have a drink. That's been us. Peace.
Peace.